Thanks everybody for joining. Today we're going to talk about BW for HANA, and I'll try to give you an overview of what it is, what are some of the new functionality and features that are being delivered, and then we'll talk about maybe a bit on the migration. So coming from, let's say, BW on a relational database, how do I get to BW for HANA? Again, because we are talking roadmap, we do need to add the disclaimer because some of the things we talk about today may not end up in some of the support packs or features or functions in later releases. So it is roadmap. Okay, it's hard to believe, but 5 years ago already is when the BW became the first application for HANA at SAP. Primarily, focus was performance and optimization, especially for those that had come from a relational database. For those that were on, let's say, BW Accelerator, BW Accelerator was kind of the foundation, if you will, for HANA. So again, that was 5 years ago. Followed up by the 7.4 release, where we started to deliver on some of the simplifications and virtualizations. Here we introduced the fact that no info cubes were needed any longer. We could query data logically and not have to physically persist it. And then we followed that with the BW 7.5 release, which further simplified the architecture and data modeling capability. We introduced some of the integration with some big data scenarios. And then we added the BW for HANA Starter add-on, which was formerly known as the Edition for HANA, BW 7.5 Edition for HANA. And then last fall, we introduced BW for HANA. BW for HANA is the next logical step with BW on HANA. Again, tremendous amount of performance boost, regardless of where you're coming from. A couple things to talk about in regard to BW for HANA to kind of just set the base or the foundation. BW for HANA is an entirely new code line. It is what we refer to as the innovation code line. Going forward, BW for HANA is going to be primarily the only code line that receives any more updates. So if you're on 7.3, 7.4, 7.5, those releases have gone into maintenance, and 7.5 may receive a few updates here and there. The vast majority of the innovation is going to be delivered on the BW for HANA code line. In regards to what has been done, this particular code line has stripped out about 5,000 lines of code out of predecessors, BW on HANA. One thing to keep in mind is we are no longer part of the NetWeaver stack anymore, so we're not dependent on us delivering capabilities in line with the NetWeaver timeline. The other thing to keep in mind is there was so much publicity at the launch, and much of it was around the cloud, but BW for HANA runs in the cloud or on-premise, and I would say the majority of our customers today are on-premise, and we obviously do have some cloud members, and they are continuing to increase each and every month. So one thing to point out is BW for HANA is not the legal successor. So what does that mean? It means from a licensing perspective, BW for HANA does not have all of the older, let's say, modeling capabilities, features, and functionalities that were delivered in previous releases and then carried forward with the BW for HANA release. We refer to it as a logical successor, which means we've gotten rid of the old and we've started new. And that's why we refer to it as a logical successor. It's really that next logical step that needs to be taken, let's say, if you're coming from 7.4 or 7.5 on HANA. So that's important to note. So as we talk about the highlights and features and functionalities that are delivered with BW for HANA, you're going to see 4 themes to it, and they're going to be focused in the areas of simplicity, openness, a modern interface or UI, and high performance. These are really the 4 blocks that the capabilities of BW for HANA fall in. From a simplicity perspective, I think one of the biggest is, if we think back to our days of being a BW developer, we worked with a number of objects, right? Info cubes, standard DSOs, right? Optimized DSOs, hybrid providers, info objects, so on and so forth. We basically worked with about 11 modeling objects. And now with BW for HANA, we work with 4, right? Those are the advanced DSO, the composite provider, the open ODS view, and an info object. Those are really the only 4 objects that are required for BW for HANA. So from a simplification perspective, what does this mean? Well, obviously now it's much easier to do the development for a BW project, right? We don't have to sit and guess, should I use a standard DSO? Should I use right optimized? Should I use InfoSat? Is it a hybrid provider? So that's one part of the simplicity perspective. Another piece of that is we don't need as many layers. If we think about the LSA++ architecture, we don't need as many layers to get the performance that we were seeking to achieve. So that's another big piece. From a lifecycle management perspective, now we're down to no longer are we using, like, let's say, DB Connect and UD Connect. We are, from a source system perspective, we are using 4 source systems: ODP, HANA, Flatfile, and the latest is Hadoop. So prior to that, I think there was 10 or 12 source system types that we could work with. Again, this has been reduced. If we go to the openness perspective, native SQL access. So now you do have the ability to use native SQL, whether it's in the native HANA system, but we have provided the adapters for things like Microsoft and Twitter, Hadoop, and various other systems. Data integration. This is really a big piece in that now much of your data can be staged virtually, and you can still receive the performance you're looking for. It does not, have to be, the data does not have to be physically moved. If you do something virtual and you decide that, yes, I like this, or this is something I'm going to do numerous times, then I can also make the decision at that point to say, okay, let's physically persist it and not lose the work that I did to do something virtually. Modern UI. I mean, going back to the early days of BW, back in 1998, I mean, ever since then, customers have complained that the UI is not very appealing, it's not user-friendly. There is a new UI for the business user. We're obviously leveraging much of the business objects tool set. From a modeling perspective, if you've seen the HANA Studio clips, this is the UI that's being taken on the back end. So for those of you that are BW people, RSA1 is kind of being replaced by the BW modeling tools, which again is much like the Studio. From a performance perspective, in-memory data warehousing, right? So columnar approach. This is something for those of you that are coming from a relational database. It's the columnar in-memory database that will provide you the biggest performance bang. For those of you that are coming from a BWA or an older release of BW on HANA. There's obviously still more performance gains for you, and much like BW Accelerator in the early days, we will constantly be taking things in tasks and procedures out of the OLAP engine and pushing it down into the HANA database. And as you see as I step through these slides, with each support pack or each quarter, we will be doing much more. Okay, so let's look at the roadmap. So beginning in the third quarter of last year, we delivered, again, 3 of the 4 themes that I mentioned earlier on simplicity, modern UI, and high performance. From a simplicity perspective, the multiple temperature data management. So now you had the ability to classify data at the partition level, which this is a big piece, because in the past we had been able to do it at the object level, and many of our customers asked that we were able to do it at partition level, but we were able to classify the data hot, warm, cold as the data was being loaded into the system. Touched on the deployment options, but right from the launch, we were able to run BW for HANA in the HANA Enterprise Cloud, Amazon Web Services, and Microsoft Azure. And then from a modeling perspective, I touched on briefly from a UI perspective, the data flow modeling. So now we can create easy end-to-end data flows right within a UI that has the same look and feel as what HANA Studio has. From that UI, I can create info objects. I can add data store objects. I can add multi-providers. I can change things. I can do unions. So much of that admin workbench has been further enhanced from a visualization and usability perspective, and this will continue over the course of the next year. And I have some examples of that and some slides further on. From a performance perspective, unified data load management, so much of the use of requests has been replaced by this transactional sequence number, which has provided significant performance boost on the data loads, and this has affected not only the data loads, info object, Open Hub service. Okay, in Q4, so now we've delivered in Q4 the business content that's specific to BW for HANA and being optimized for BW for HANA. And there's 4 areas in which we started out initially, and that is the financials, controlling, material management, and sales and distribution. And from an industry perspective, the utilities sector was the first sector or industry that got initial focus. This is going to carry on throughout. Going forward, additional application areas will be delivered. From an openness perspective, obviously, all sorts of talk around Hadoop, and here we delivered on providing at least source system type and also the integration with the Spark SQL adapter. The one nice thing from this Q4 perspective on the native data warehousing approach was on the HANA Studio side, if you will. We now have a data store object, and which has rollback and delta capabilities. So this is very nice and a good step forward. In addition, we do have the ability to create HANA views within BW, or we can import a HANA view from BW and make it a data store object, or we can create a data store object or use the data store object in BW and make the corresponding HANA view in native HANA. So this will continue to be developed as well. Okay, so what's planned for Q2? Again, we will carry on with the data tiering optimization. So this is the concept of classifying your data as hot, warm, and cold. Again, this can be done at partition level. The other nice thing is we now have this concept of the use of extension nodes. So we can use extension nodes for NLS, and the tools can be IQ and now Hadoop. So again, Hadoop is something that we've not had in the past. IQ we've worked with for the last couple of years on BW and HANA. But the whole extension node concept is new and much more efficient. So this is a big step from an NLS perspective. BPC, if we recall, as part of the launch, BW for HANA was delivered and supported 0 add-ons. And BPC will be the first add-on that is delivered, and that will happen in Q2. I've heard the June timeframe. But this is significant. Obviously, BPC is heavily used. From a modern UI perspective, we've already started to see some of this with the source systems. I mentioned Hadoop. Openness, we will have Fora support for big data and further EIM integration. So now we'll be able to stream. I mentioned the Delta capabilities in Q4, and now this ties in with the streaming. So the Delta and real-time streaming of the HANA native tables. From a performance perspective, I touched on this as well, how we will continue to take things from the OLAP engine and push it down into the database, the HANA database. And next on the list for this quarter is exception aggregation and unit of measure conversion. So with Q4, from a modern UI perspective, the transformation modeling and DTP maintenance will be part of the replacement of RSA1. So these are some of the final pieces. Additionally, you will have the ability to monitor your process chains and make changes and restarts from the web. Don't quote me on this, but I also think that this will be able to be done from your devices as well. So that's a nice thing to have. In regard to openness, this is something that I think is kind of interesting. Hadoop is, all customers are talking about it, whether they have projects in play or whether they're thinking about a project. It's being discussed, by virtually all customers. And one of the developments in Q4 is going to be the ability for a data flow in BW for HANA to be dependent upon a process in Hadoop successfully completing. So you're going to have that ability to put dependencies on data flow or processes in Hadoop to either start or stop processes in BW. So the integration is getting much tighter, and this, I am guessing, is going to get even tighter or more integrated as we progress going forward. The other nice thing is the delivery of a common orchestration and monitoring tool. So the ability to look at native HANA on one side and look at BW for HANA on the other side through one lens. So how is the system running? I can use the same tool. I'm not using a certain transaction in BW for HANA and then have to use a menu-based system on native HANA. There's going to be one tool that we can use to monitor both systems with obviously the same interface. Further discussing the performance perspective, again, the push down of OLAP capabilities. Now we're talking about top end and bottom end bottom-end analysis. Okay, beyond Q4 and into the future, from a BW for HANA perspective, there's going to be new integration with various other products in SAP's basket, and the one that's being worked on currently, it's in pilot mode, is SuccessFactors, but Ariba and C4C are in the works as well. From a UI perspective, again, health monitoring and prediction. So using some of the predictive analytic capabilities to determine when your BW for HANA system needs to be worked on, or when tables are getting too large, or when partitions are getting too large. So some of this predictive analytics that can try to give you a heads up that something needs to be done soon to alleviate some pressures in one area or another. Additionally, machine learning will be offered or provided, I should say. But again, this is not quite developed yet. From an openness perspective, Power Designer will be part of the modeling toolbox, if you will. I know this has been talked about, gosh, it seems like for 3-4 years, but it is now on the roadmap. So that'll be nice from a complex data modeling perspective. HANA view generation for open ODS views. So if you have an open ODS view, now you'll be able to generate the corresponding view on the HANA side, which is nice. Today we don't have that. We have it for store objects and info cubes. And then the HAP, or the HANA analysis process, this will be integrated with Spark or Hadoop. From the OLAP manager perspective, stock coverage and current member, again, this is way out there, and there's obviously more to providing further performance gains than just two, but these are the two that registered with development based on customer feedback. So now we've kind of laid the foundation and talked about some of the things, compared and contrasted some of the differences with BW for HANA versus the predecessors. So now the biggest question is, how do I get there? Well, there's really 3 ways to get to BW for HANA. The first way is if you have a BW on any DB. So if this is Oracle, SQL Server, DB2, there is a migration process that would step you through the migration. And again, this has been offered for even going back 7.3, 7.4 on HANA, I should say. It's a very similar process. It uses the tool, the database migration option. So this is one that probably is the most frequently used, simply because there's almost 20,000 BW customers, and they all aren't on HANA yet. So this is probably the most frequently used. Then we have the ability, and this is new, that's being offered beginning in June, but it's coming from any system. Let's say you have BW already, I'm on DB2 or Oracle, and I want to get to HANA, but I don't want to bring the entire system. Here's an example. There's numerous customers that we work with that have been on BW since the late 90s or the early 2000s. And if you think about how much functionality and knowledge has been dispersed into the BW product over, since those years, if you had the ability to start over and do something different, you probably would do it much easier, much simpler, right? So there's multiple customers out there that have been there a long time and don't want to bring all the garbage with them. So what they want to do is they want to carve out pieces of their system, put it in a transport, stand up a new BW for HANA system, and transport those objects, that part of the data model, that data, into BW for HANA. So this, as we'll see in the coming slides, this is called the remote conversion, but we'll go into more details on that. So that's another option. So this would be an entirely new SID versus the one we first talked about would be the same SID. And then lastly is just a new system, which you often will hear as greenfield. So it's the ability to install BW for HANA and start building. So again, these are the three ways in which you can get to BW for HANA, and now we'll start to go into the details. Okay, so to convert your system, as I mentioned before, the step one coming from any DB is the use of the database migration option. Again, this is a tool that has been used for several years, and it is very efficient. This provides a task list, guided procedure, each and every step that you have to do, and provide the status with each and every step. It's executed, where you're at, tested, and proven. So that didn't get you to BW on HANA. Then, if we think about it, we have all of these old objects left, right? We still have multi-cubes. Even though we're on HANA, we would still have multi-cubes. We would still have standard data store objects. We would still have optimized data store objects. We'd have hybrid providers and so on and so forth. So then what we need to do is implement the add-on. And again, this is the starter add-on that we talked about earlier. This was formerly known as the 7.5 edition for HANA. But this is an add-on, and it provides just a tremendous amount of tools that perform all these checks on your system that says, okay, this code that you've written has to be moved from here to here. You have 10 optimized data store objects that need to be converted to advanced data store objects. You've got 42 info cubes that need to be converted to. It does all this stuff, right, that identifies them. But the nice thing is it not only will identify them, but it will do the conversion for you as well. So it'll take your info cube and convert it to an advanced data store object. And additionally, starting in June, it will also, and we'll see in later slides, but it will also take the data with it. So this again is part of the path. And once we get to a point where we have everything in our system, HANA optimized objects, at that point, then we can do the conversion. It gets us from the 7.5 starter add-on to BW for HANA. Okay? All BW customers can start now. There's no hang-up. I mean, this is available. Those that are on HANA already have a head start, and it could be for multiple reasons. One, if they're on HANA, they've already done database migration, so their database is HANA already. But more than likely, they've already started to convert some of their objects from the old to the HANA optimized. So probably ahead in more ways than one. But the other nice thing is you can convert at your own pace. So this is not a slam dunk. If you want to get to the HANA database and then take your time to convert your old objects to the new HANA optimized objects, you can take your time. You can go as fast or as slow as you like. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the starter add-on, if you will. So again, this was the 7.5 edition for HANA. For in-place conversions, the edition for HANA really has two modes. One is the compatibility mode. In this compatibility mode, this is the default, right? This is where you come into when you first get into the edition for starter add-on. You'll be in the compatibility mode. And with the compatibility mode, you can work with the unsupported object types, right? So you can work with info cubes. You can work with optimized DSOs. However, you cannot create any of these. You only have the ability to create the new HANA optimized, right? The advanced data store object, the composite provider, the info object, and the open ODS view. So everything that you brought in or that was part of your database migration, that existing scenario can continue to run, right? To run for as long as you want it to run or as little, right? If you want to do the conversion right away, you can do that. Unsupported objects can be changed when adding them to the whitelist. So within your system, you have a table that has a list of objects and their status, what if they're one of the old objects or one of the new. You do have the ability to add some of your objects to a whitelist that will allow you to make changes. And this is done really, I think, for emergency basis. So if you're working with old and you have a problem and it's impacting production, you can quickly get around it by adding it to the whitelist. Okay, so once you start moving, you get your feet underneath you, you're on HANA, you get used to it, you understand how it works, you understand that there's only 4 modeling objects, you get comfortable, you then move to B4H mode. And with B4H mode, and again, this is just a flip of the switch, it's a checkbox in a table, no longer is there support for the old objects. The whitelist is gone. This is go time, right? So this is real. This is really playing a preseason game, if you will, right? It's getting you ready, doing your last checks, running some of your tools that are checking the system to make sure you're all set to go. You've converted everything to HANA optimized, and then once your checklist comes all green, now you're ready for the conversion. And then that will upgrade you to BW for HANA. So as part of this toolbox transfer kit, if you will, this is being delivered in June. And as I mentioned, there's really the two types of conversions. There's the in-place conversion, which we talked about, where we keep the same SID. We go through the migration. We use these tools to transfer the classic or the old objects into the HANA optimized. We add the component, the starter add-on, and then we upgrade to BW for HANA. The remote conversion, again, this is greenfield in the sense, right? You're carving out pieces of an existing production system, and you're transporting them to a new BW for HANA SID, and then we're transporting the corresponding data with it, and this is done primarily to, I would say, alleviate risk, right? So you can carry on running your old system until you feel confident with what you have with the new one. And once you're okay, yep, everything lines up, we're all good, then you can, sever ties with the old. But it gives customers the ability to run the production as is, and then build your new system in parallel. Again, you can be on, as long as you're on BW 7.0 to begin with, you can. Okay, so if we start to go in a little deeper, from an in-place conversion perspective, we're converting the classic objects or the old objects, and we're adjusting DTPs and transformations, because if we think about it, we had a lot of transformations and DTPs between, let's say, ODS and an InfoCube. Well, now that InfoCube is no longer there, so now we need to adjust the transformations, maybe move them below the data store object. But my point is, this work is captured in a transport and then moved to production, and then we have to import the transport, moving the data to the new objects. So this is the in-place conversion. If we talk about the remote conversion, it's very similar in the sense that we're capturing selected objects in a transport. The only issue is we are only taking selected objects, right? We don't want the entire dev system. We only want, let's say, orders and billing. All the other stuff is garbage. Data in it, gigabytes upon gigabytes of data that is not used or required. We only want these two pieces. We put them in a transport. We transport them to production. And then we take the data from that production system and transport the data for those selected objects to the new BW for HANA. So again, two different paths of getting there, similar, but it really depends on what you want to do. Okay, I don't want to go through each one of these bullets, but from a roadmap perspective for the transfer tools, as I mentioned, this is being released in June. And then again in October, there will be release 1.5 with performance enhancements, and then by January of next year, I mean it's going to be very much like an automation based on the features and functionality that is documented here. So the point is, this is not something that's just thrown out there and will be unsupported and you know, not user-friendly. This is something that's been worked on diligently by actually our team, and will be available in June, and will be followed up again 2 more times by the end of the year for additional functionality and features. Okay, I want to touch briefly on the analytics side. I know this is probably in the majority of you on the call's wheelhouse, but a couple things. From a cloud perspective, Business Objects Cloud provides all the capabilities you're looking for from a BW for HANA perspective, from an on-premise perspective, Business Objects BI. The thing to note is BEX is not supported with BW for HANA. So that doesn't mean you lose all your queries. They are transferred automatically, but you don't have that capability. You have to use a different tool. So we talked about business objects planning and consolidation. So this is being delivered in June timeframe, and then obviously predictive analytics. So we talked briefly about this, how predictive analytics is making its way into the BW for HANA lifecycle from a perspective of maintenance. So help identify future problems with my system. Okay, a couple other things for clarification purposes. BW for HANA and S4 HANA. They are not the same. S4 HANA does not require BW for HANA. BW for HANA does not require S4 HANA. They are entirely independent. Having said that, S4 HANA, yes, you can do reporting and analytics off of it, primarily at an operational level. Yes, it's real time. It's very lightweight from a consumption perspective. You certainly are not, let's say, joining data from other systems in S4 HANA to do your analytics. BW for HANA is truly an enterprise data warehouse. This is where your data is governed, right? This is where you have all your business logic set up to transform that data. And yes, they can be used in conjunction with each other. So you can still be with BW for HANA and dive into S4 HANA to create some analytics. But the point I'm making is they are entirely independent of one another. They are entirely different products that have different capabilities. That's all, and that's all I'll say about that. Content implications for S4 HANA. So there is a list of extractors that are enabled for BW for HANA. and those you can see based on the note. And I think we've got another slide that kind of talks about the core data. Then the last thing, and this customers have asked about, so there are a couple classes that are being offered right now. BW 462, unfortunately, is in German only, and English is coming soon. But this is a 5-day class that basically is for those that have not had any access to HANA. So you may be on 7.x, and now you're moving to HANA. So this would be a good class for you. Brian's.
We'd like to thank you again for your participation. You may now disconnect.